Well, good evening and welcome to the last of the Ian Ramsey Centre seminars on science and religion. We're delighted this evening to welcome Dr. Conor Cunningham. I first came across Dr. Cunningham as a recommendation from a friend of mine who had seen him on the BBC during the Darwin year. And his documentary looking at the theology and the philosophy of Darwinism made him stand out somewhat among the various documentaries and commentaries that were produced at that time. I don't know if there's any connection with the BBC. I have not yet invited you back, but it certainly stood out as a very impressive programme. And I was very pleased then several months ago to have a chance to meet him again when I was giving a seminar in Nottingham. So I thought we must get this man to give a presentation to the Ian Ramsey Centre. He's a lecturer in theology and religious studies, and he's assistant director of the Centre for Theology and Philosophy at the University of Nottingham. His research interests include metaphysics, philosophical theology, philosophy of religion, and phenomenology. And he was involved, as I said, during the BBC's Darwin season, looking at issues surrounding Darwin and God. He originally studied law at the University of Kent, and then an MPhil in philosophy under the supervision of James Williams. On completing his MPhil with distinction, he went to the University of Cambridge to read for a diploma in theology. He was then awarded a British Academy studentship to study for a PhD. After writing his first book on nihilism, it's a book called The Genealogy of Nihilism, now being translated into Spanish, Dr. Cunningham has recently finished Evolution, Darwin's Pious Idea. So I'll give you a little glance at that book, Darwin's Pious Idea. And this, I've just been told, has been translated now into German, Spanish, French and Korean. It was recently won an award from a Catholic award in the arena of science and religion. His current interests are really focused on the soul, and he is preparing a book called Whither the Soul, ? The End of Death. So issues ranging over evolution, God, the soul. I think we've been guaranteed to have an interesting evening. Would you please welcome Dr. Conor Cunningham.
My one true narcotic, Lucozade. It's the only true narcotic. Thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me? This thing working? Thank you so much for having me here, being invited. It's wonderful to be here. And actually just seeing people I haven't seen for many, many years. I with Daphne Hampson here, I studied Hegel with in Dundee. I think it was a philology of Geist. I think it was a philology of Geist that we studied. So let me give you a quick anecdote before I kick into the official stuff. I had absolutely no interest in evolution something ever. None whatsoever. And when I was finishing off my PhD at Cambridge, I had to go to Stag Do in Dublin. And a friend of mine, I was born in Belfast, and a friend of mine was living down there and working down there. And he was a good old Presbyterian chap, been to Sunday school, done all the CU, SU, I don't know, all that stuff. Believed in God and all that. And we're walking down O'Connell Street, and I said, "So, what are you doing? What's your job now?" I said, "Well, I'm working for some investment bank." And I went, brilliant, thinking, bastard, he's got the money, I haven't. So I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm doing theology and philosophy at Cambridge." And this is a very gently spoken chap. Really gently spoken chap. And he said to me, "But I thought Darwin had got rid of theology." I said, "Excuse me? This is ridiculous." And I suddenly thought, right, that's it. When I finish my nihilism nonsense, I'm going to kick in to doing evolution. So that's how it came about that I studied evolution for my sins, which must have been many. So, okay, it is argued by many that the scientific revolution, so-called, began in 1543 with the publication of Copernicus's famous work. That in the idea that the Earth was in orbit around the sun rather than the other way around. This heliocentric model displaced the centrality of mankind. Yeah? It humiliated us, apparently. Mary McCarthy, in her book, A History of Increasing Humiliation. Don't you love it? It's like marriage. Modern neurosis began with the discoveries of Copernicus. Yeah? So we're no longer the center of the world. We were no longer special. We were displaced. To compound matters, 130 years later, Newton published his most famous work, his Principia, a work that supplanted the old Aristotelian modes or model of causality. Yeah? So we had those four models of causality. Can't remember how they go. Formal, material, formal, final, and efficient. And the only one we were left with is material, well, two actually, material and efficient. So the whole universe was now, so we were displaced by Copernicus. Then Newton goes, now forget Aristotle's final and formal. That's all rubbish. Yeah? Material and efficient will do fine. Will absolutely do fine. There's a mechanical explanation of the universe which will do completely suffice. Thank you very much. Increasing sense of humiliation. So then when we looked up into the heavens and you stood there, when you're dating, yeah, with your lover or former, going to be lover or hopefully lover, and you're looking up and going, oh, isn't that lovely? The stars, they're beautiful, it's gorgeous, the universe is full of magic, and it's fantastic. Emptiness. The abyss. It's full only with the abyss. The universe is infinite, which means even Copernicus' heliocentric model doesn't even begin to cut the grass. This is big stuff. Being an infinite universe, there couldn't be a center. So when we looked up, the heavens weren't full of angels dancing, weren't full of magic, romance, anything perfect. They were full of nothingness. And that nothingness fell to earth. Because where's earth? We still think in a pre-Copernican way, don't we? We still think that the earth's important, don't we? We still think the earth has some sort of significance, yeah? But no, we're just a speck on the big whale's bum. It's got nothing to do with anything. The abyss falls through us, and we too are only full of nothingness. But there's hope. There's hope, don't worry. There's hope. There's a scientific frontier, at least at this juncture. The mind. Science hadn't yet been able to explain the mind. So we could give in to Copernicus' heliocentric model. We could give in to Newton's apparently mechanistic account of the universe, which I don't think it quite was. But at least we had our mind. It's almost like a human of the gaps. A human of the gaps. Forget God. We're struggling to be. Yeah, we are struggling to be. But we've got our frontier. And as John Locke, our chap from, where was he? It was Kent, wasn't it? Kent. Famously said, it's a quote from him. Somerset, was it? Yes. Yeah, sorry. I'm very bad at pub quizzes. If then, I know the football team, but I can't remember when they won or who scored. If then there must be something eternal, let us see what sort of being it must be. And to that it is very obvious to reason that it must necessarily be a cognitive being, for it is impossible to conceive that ever bare incognitive matter should produce a thinking, intelligent being, as that nothing should of itself produce matter. This is what Daniel Dennett calls a mind-first view of the world. This is the one thing that science can't yet explain. But then, the upstart, Charles Darwin turns up and closed all that last gap. No, we're heliocentric, mechanistic, and the mind is now within the explanatory powers of science. Ergo, worthless. Yeah? This is our disenchantment. And this mind first view had generated in the past, and you've probably all heard of this, in the great chain of being. Yeah? The great chain of being. So we've got the floor, anyone calling the police? No? A worm? Anyone calling the police? No? A child? Anyone calling the police? So, we have from the inanimate, the animate, the vegetative, the intelligent, the hyper-intelligent, to the God, the first intelligence, or the angels and God. Yeah? The great chain of being. No, we're Democrats. Peace, man. All gone. Radical democracy. Everything was to be of equal significance. Yeah? That's society. That's the worldview that we think of, isn't it? Yeah? But back to the calling the police, I'm not quite sure we do. But anyway, we'll get back to that. So, to give an example of this shock, a lovely novella by A.S. Byatt has this wonderful quote, and it has a Darwinian figure, Alabaster, and Amundsen, who's Darwinian, and Alabaster, Anakin Vicar, and this is the shock to our worldview. This is a quote from the novella. The world has changed so much in my lifetime. I am old enough to believe in our first parents in paradise, as a little boy to believe in Satan hidden in the snake, and in the archangel with a flaming sword, closing the gates. I'm old enough to believe without question the divine birth on a cold night with the full sky singing of angels and the shepherds staring up in wonder, and the strange kings advancing across the sand on camels with gifts. And now I'm presented with a world in which we are what we are because the mutations of soft jelly, calcareous bone matter through unimaginable millennia. A world in which angels and devils do not battle in the heavens for virtue and vice, but in which we eat and are eaten and are absorbed into other flesh and blood. The ultimate disenchantment, as Weber would have it, of our world. Daniel Dennett, Dawkins' Rottweiler, so-called, picks up on this and says, yeah, let's run with this. Let's run with this. And he calls it a universal acid. Although I was very pleased to tell him, sorry to tell an anecdote, I was very pleased to tell him, after I interviewed him once, that actually the American philosopher John Dewey had actually written it in an essay in 1923 using the exact same metaphor. And he went, oh my goodness, you just ruined my day. I said, I'm hoping to ruin your life. But anyway, he calls it a universal acid. Yeah? Did you ever hear of universal acid? This fantasy used to amuse me and some of my schoolboy friends. Universal acid is a liquid so corrosive that it will eat through anything. The problem is, what do you keep it in? It dissolves glass bottles and stainless steel canisters as well as paper bags. What would happen if you somehow came upon or created a dollop of universal acid? How do you get a dollop of universal acid? For any scientists out there, how do you get a dollop? The dollop has to have resistance. Anyway, would the whole planet be eventually destroyed? What would it leave in its wake? Everything had been transformed by its encounter with the universal acid. And what would the world look like? Little did I realize in a few years I would encounter an idea. Darwin's idea. Bearing an unmistakable likeness to universal acid. It eats through just about every traditional concept and leaves in its wake a revolutionized worldview. And most of the old landmarks still recognizable, but transformed in fundamental ways. So, Darwin's idea had been born in a biology room, yeah? So some guy up going, you've signed up for biology, here we are going, here's natural selection, here it works out, here's the genetics, here's the thing. But this universal acid drips, pours out of the biology lecture hall, rips down the architrave, pours down the academy, and absorbs every single subject, especially the humanities. Nothing left. We are in a post-apocalyptic landscape. It's Mad Max time. Yeah? It's not the world we think we live in. This is universal acid. It's going to explain everything. Why you have sex, with whom you have sex, why you try to do physics, why you write a sonnet, why you play football, why you don't play football, why you go to church, why you give the children in need. It's going to explain everything. Everything. We are almost now in the matrix. We are in the matrix. This is the dangerous idea. And Darwin himself had already hinted at this in his Descent of Man. This is a quote from him, and you probably all know this. Man with all his noble qualities, with his god-like intellect, which has penetrated into the movements and constitutions of the solar system, with all these exalted powers, man still bears in his bodily frame the incredible stamp of his lowly origin. These origins are, as you see, one of common descent or ancestry. Yeah? So you know evolution, and you're all from Oxford, you're posh enough to know what evolution is actually about. Not the Sunday papers tell you, well, you come from monkeys. No, it's not that, is it? It's that you share a more recent ancestor with the great apes than you do with a mushroom. Yeah? Because life is what's called monophyletic. History. It's almost just a pure diachronic model. Pure diachronic. Yeah? Pure history. So just as the heavens and earth are not radically different kinds, neither are mind or matter. Or mind and animal. Although I did think today, I went on the train, I was thinking about this, and any materialists out there, I just love the Q&A later on. I love the fact that these guys say against John Locke, no. I mean, that's brilliant. They go, no, mind did evolve from matter. Right? Okay? Now, I'm willing to grant that. You willing to grant that? Yeah, so fair enough. Yeah? Mind came from matter, yeah? Yeah? So there's mind that's come from matter. Yeah? What's our next move? Which we're going to see in a second. Therefore, there's no such thing as mind. Now, I'm not quite sure in a philosophy class that would quite work. It's a bit like when you read your Sunday papers, the broadsheet. And this actually happened to me once. One Sunday, I was reading the Observer for my sins, and it said, title, in one of the, I think it was the review section or something, it said, no life in anywhere else in the universe apart from Earth. Therefore, humans meaningless. Ooh, right? And I swear to you, I'm not joking. The next Sunday, life probably everywhere in the universe. Therefore, humans meaningless. I thought fundamentalists were bad. But anyway. Okay. So, this Darwinian theory, born in the lecture hall, biology, is taken over and extrapolated into universal theory, a first philosophy, a metaphysics. Completely self-defeating, but anyway. Now, the Neanderthal, one of our cousins, will be our guiding figure here. Do we know where, and you're all smart people, so someone's going to pub quiz me out here, but do you know where the word Neanderthal comes from? Go on, someone be smart. Yeah?
German Valley.
Yeah, but what's the German Valley named after? Whom is the German Valley named after? See, I was good at that pub quiz. That's got to be written down. No one? It's actually named after a theologian. Isn't that brilliant? So, there was this German theologian called Neander, who was teaching theology, and who refused to accept Holy Communion. And he was banned from teaching. And he used to go and walks in this valley, subsequently named Neander's Valley. That's where the fossils were found. And they were then named Neanderthals. So it's named after a theologian. It's brilliant. You couldn't make it up. So, the point I'm going to make throughout is that I think that Dennett, Dawkins, all that lot are Neanderthals. Are utter Neanderthals. You know why? Because, could this still work? Can I geek this number? Because, well, we'll see later on, but I think by default they are Christian fundamentalists. They deny the fruits of evolution. They go, it came from the vagina. It came from the semen. It came from the soil. It came from materiality. Ergo, crap. Sounds a bit like a Christian heresy to me. Yeah? We'll get to that. Okay. So ultra-Darwinists, and it's not my phrase for them, that was Stephen Jay Gould, an atheist himself, named it, or Darwinian fundamentalists, also not my phrase, another atheist, Richard Lewington, in following the pattern of the Neanderthal, propagate what we could call a Zwinglian metaphysics. No offense to Zwingli, but a Zwinglian metaphysics. It's merely symbolic. Your life is merely epiphenomenal. It's not really real. Only your DNA is real. Only materiality. Anything that comes from it can't have its own efficacy. It can't have its own integrity. It can't have it because it came from that. And then you've got to start thinking to yourself, how do you falsify that? Does it have to come from the clouds? A bit strange. We'll get back to that later. Okay. In a similar fashion, materialists, at least crude ones, who to be honest tend to stack the galleries, do the same, insofar as one of their main rhetorical devices to say, aha! You are material. You have kidneys, a liver, a pancreas, a heart, a brain, a thing. Therefore, nada. Again, how do you falsify that? You're an angel. You don't have a body. You don't have kidneys. You don't have any of these things. You just come down. Something from Star Trek. Yeah? Like a Zanussi washing machine when I was growing up. Yeah? Do you remember that when I was younger? It just came down. Yeah, no one ever brought it in from Curry's. Yeah? It just came down. It's like, ooh, it's us. That's how we came down. That's the falsifiable position. I'll get back to that again. So, as the Jewish thinker, Hans Jonas rightly says, there's a quote, in the hue and cry over the indignity done to man's metaphysical status, in the doctrine of his animal descent, it was overlooked that by the same token, some dignity had been restored to the realm of life as a whole. If man was the relative of animals, which he is, then animals were the relatives of man. And, in degrees, bearers of that inwardness of which man, the most advanced of their kin, is conscious in himself. Right? So, we've all been, I bet you, hands up, completely, honestly. The old evolutionary stuff, common ancestry, yeah? If you're a Christian or religious, Abrahamic faith, Imago Dei, all that stuff, yeah? The common ancestry, evolution stuff, you go, not quite sure where to stick the image of God there. I'm a bit ashamed. There's a slight threat there, isn't there? Isn't there? Yeah? But this Jewish thinker is going, no, it's the opposite way around. It's the opposite way around. Why are you looking at it that way? Yeah? So all the time, for example, you see people on TV going, I think that chimpanzees are like humans, therefore humans aren't humans. Again, I don't see the sort of non sequitur. Again, I don't see it. Or think, oh, you mean there's an analogical relation between the two things? Because if you don't keep the human, you can't make the analysis. Can you? What are you pointing to anymore? Why don't you just point to a brick? Yeah? So to point to the chimpanzee with its tool-making properties, with its maybe its sense of empathy, with its sense of developed notion of cerebral ability, why bother unless you're keeping one part of the analogy in place? So this is Jonas is saying this, which I think is important. And after all, according to Christianity, think about this. A beaten, mutilated, first century Jew hanged outside the city gates amongst the refuse was God incarnate. And before that, the Logos had passed through the birth canal, experiencing mammalian birth, with all its sweat, excrement, and blood. Had walked amongst us, crapping, eating, sweating, burping, breaking wind. I have to say it because of my children, because I can't use another word. And that was, again, that's just orthodoxy for Christianity. So the common ancestry thing seems like, as we would say in Belfast, wee buns. I mean, where's the radicalness in it? That's much more frightening for a religion than apes sharing a more recent ancestor with the great apes than we do with the mushroom. Okay. In a recent, I read recently in a newspaper that Richard Dawkins funded a children's summer camp. Do you hear about this? Oh, I just love it. I love Oxford, hey? Yeah. You hear about this summer camp, Richard Dawkins, no? So no longer are these Christian summer camps, stuff all that religious, conditioning. We're going to have a secular summer camp. And this is honestly true. So Kumbaya, my Lord, yeah? You know that song, that hymn, or whatever you call it, which I never particularly liked. But anyway, Kumbaya, my Lord was out. Do you know what was replaced? Did they release in the paper? John Lennon's secular hymn, Imagine. Right? It's going to be very important. So, and Dawkins, in his unbelievably altruistic, overcoming of selfish genes generosity, dedicated £100 to it from the millions he's got. So, we've got John Lennon's Imagine kicking out Kumbaya, my Lord, which I actually wouldn't mind, to be honest, because it was crap. So there we are. So replace with John Lennon's secular hymn, Imagine. In that song, we asked to imagine a world without religion. You remember this? Come on, you guys, you baby boomers. It's easy if you try. No heaven, above us only sky. Yeah? And so on. If we'd only embrace this rational mantra, all the theological guff would be gone, and the world would be a self-pristine, overflowing with rationality and enlightened humanity. Yeah? No 9/11. Okay? Not at all. Quite the reverse. And it is here that we can locate the cultural confusion that has bedeviled the debate between science and religion, between the natural and the supernatural. For we have, it seems, articulated this debate in a wholly question-begging manner. And I must say that both sides are guilty. On the one hand, we have theologians and religious people speaking about their faith in a manner that leads them to be guilty of what I would term anonymous atheism, corrupting a phrase of Karl Rahner, to anonymous Christianity. They have bought into the idea that the supernatural is something extra. Yeah? So here we've got nothing going on with this. No Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad. There's nothing in this. It's just there, isn't it? Just bits of materiality. But then we could stick the Bible, the Koran, on top of it, and that's supernatural. That's an inspired scripture on top of the merely mundane. Yeah? Brilliant. So religion becomes something like Pilates or marathon running or something extra. No doubt to the religious people something extra special. And then the atheists go, you're bang on, it's something extra. It's so extra we just don't need it. Because it doesn't do very much. We can get along with it very well, thank you very much. Call Occam's razor, if you will. I don't know who's wielding the razor, but that's a different thing. So, the religious atheist debate, science, religion, evolution, theology, has been set up in these terms in modern times. Yeah? We go to church because it's spiritual. Yeah? It's spiritual. It's nice. It's nice. And you know what it's going to do? It's going to get me to heaven. If I do stuff, I'm up. I'm going. I'm bugger you lot, you're not. So the point is, it's almost like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, where you get the, you know, where is it Charlie? It gets the gold ticket, and he gets and you all don't. You're all stuffed. Yeah, that's the way the logic works. It's a pure dualism: natural, supernatural, and it's all actually based historically. I mustn't get ahead of myself, but it's actually based on Descartes' division between mind and matter. You know this? Do we know? Does anyone not know this? So you've got extended matter and extended matter and mind. Yeah, yeah. But the very division allowed the veneration. So what did I start off with first? So the former was matter. Yeah. So the division allowed the eradication of the latter and the veneration of the latter. Because, as I just said, mind simply became made or constituted by extended matter. So as soon as you divide it that way, the grammar of the debate accommodates the eradication of one and the veneration of the other. And to the point that this one over here, mind, is only made up of this stuff, extended matter, over here. We'll get back to that too. Okay. Okay, so the religious people were in cahoots with the materialists. They were both dancing from the same, what was that, our grandmother's dance card, yeah? They had the same dance card, yeah? So they had the same Cartesian dualism, the extended matter and mind, which allowed, as I said, the veneration of this one and the eradication of that one, because that became the constituent element of that. So in it, there is no mind. For religious people, talking about cutting your face off to spite your nose. Now, you might think I'm over-egging the ontological omelette. Yeah? But I'm not. And this is the thing in the academy where one has to be careful. These things are actually very, very, very serious. And for my sins, I had to spend my time reading nihilists, reductive materialists, non-reductive materialists, limited materialists, you name it, I have to read them all. I don't know what I did in the past. I don't know what happened. But I'm going to read you. This is not from religious people. This is not from polemics. This is not from anything whatsoever. This is just normal stuff. Right? So forget Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, spirituality. Do I believe in God? Well, you know, but I believe in good to people. Right? Forget all that. This is where it's at. As one Nobel-winning prize biologist put it, biology no longer studies life. Biologos. This should be picking up the dole. And as a philosopher of science tells us, from Harvard, if we ask the question, when did human life begin? The answer is never. Things are changing here. Here are former philosophers. First of all, Paul Churchland. We're going to get his wife in a minute. They do a really good they should be in Strictly Come Dancing, because they really have this sort of tag team thing going. So Paul and Richard Churchland are very famous philosophers of mind. Canadians, I think. Toronto, I think. So here's Paul Churchland. Could it turn out that no one has ever believed anything? So there you are. If you can imagine back, some of you. Do you undergraduate days, you come back in your first term, Michaelmas, and you go back to the pub and you're having a Nescafe after a few ales, and you go, do you believe in God? No, I don't. No, I don't believe in God. And then someone goes, yeah, I do believe in God. You can't even be an atheist. Could it turn out that no one believed anything? As Thomas Metzinger, a more updated version of Paul Churchland, one of the most foremost philosophers of mind in the world, no such things as selves exist in selves exist in the world. Nobody ever was or had a self. Hard to be an atheist then, isn't it? And it's not just the self that is lost. We were told that, quote from one philosopher and one scientist, ethics is an illusion fobbed off on us by our genes. So we've lost belief, we've lost the self, we've lost ethics. Oh, we haven't got started yet. Right? Now, here goes rationality itself. Formal thought. Quote, same guys. Biological fitness is a function of reproductive advantages rather than philosophical insight. Thus, if we benefit biologically by being deluded, like believing in Jesus, about the true nature of formal thought, then so be it. A tendency to objectify is the price of reproductive success. Self-belief, epistemology. Self, ontology. Now we've gone back to epistemology in terms of formal thought is going. It gets even worse. Quine, for example, once said that the belief in a common object, any object, that's a quote from him, any object in the world is equivalent to believing in Homer's gods. So how are we going here? What have we got left? We've lost the self, we've lost belief, we've lost formal thought, now we've lost objects. Makes the CU camp a bit different now, doesn't it? Okay, and we're not even finished yet here. Now, so how, if matter is all there is, and in our folk language, you know what folk language means? Does anyone not know what folk language means? So you know where you say sun rises, yeah? But we know by astronomy, it doesn't rise, does it? Because it just, but we use the terms, don't we? The sun rises, the sun sets, but we know it's rubbish, but we still use it, yeah? We're all fine with that, we're enlightened, yeah? I'm enlightened, yeah? Bring on the sherry. Right? But you still say, I believe. I don't believe. I think. Yeah? There is an object. Well, I'm sorry, they're all gone. It ain't up. It ain't on the menu. It ain't on the menu. And so matter thus, and now matter so. So, for example, yeah. In fact, there actually isn't such a thing as a chair in the world. It's not natural kind, and mereologically it doesn't work. But anyway, forget all that. But look, so if I do that, yeah? Right? You're all thinking, what happened there? That chair doesn't look quite right, yeah? Yeah? Matter thus, and I matter so. Yeah? If we call it parochially or colloquially, cancer, rape, murder, genocide, you name it. That's the same thing. If matter is the simply grand, only term, how do you differentiate between one thing than another? And if you differentiate between one thing and another, is the thing differentiating, is that material? And then how do you adjudicate between the two things? Is one being better than the other? How do we have normativity? How do we adjudicate between the two things? Yeah? I mean, come on. All those who committed the crimes didn't think they were doing any crimes. So, is it simply a subjective bourgeois nonsense? This is what the debate is. Okay, now Dawkins, old buddy, he might just tell us, stiff upper lip and all that, pull up socks and get on with it. There's sometimes something just being wrong. Yeah, Jesus is rubbish, Buddha's crap, and Muhammad, let's just forget about him. But the point is there something about being plain right? I'm up for being wrong. But I want there to be a position for me to be right. This is the point. And I just mentioned Paul Churchland, the famous philosopher of mind, saying we may not believe anything at all. Here's his wife, equally famous. She says, there is a fatal tendency, this quote, there's a fatal tendency to think of the brain as essentially a fact-finding business. Looked at from an evolutionary point of view, the principal function of nervous systems is to the body parts where they should be in order that the organism may survive. Truth, whatever that may be, definitely takes hindmost. Yeah? Who cares? It's purely functionalization. And I'll get that in a second. I'll explain in a second with another analogy. And a lot of atheist philosophers follow this. Jerry Feder, Thomas Nagel, Barry Stroud, all atheists all follow this and think, yeah, this is right. Right? We're stuffed now. Okay. So, pure functionalization of truth. So truth is simply an adaptation. It's about fitness, biological fitness. It ain't about, so you only, and it's true in a way. I mean, there's some truth in this, by the way, I would argue. Did you ever see that movie, Finding Forrester, with Sean Connery? And he was a famous novelist, he was a recluse. You remember? And he said, the young black lad says to him, his sort of protege, says, why write books? Well, to sleep with women. Yeah? So it's functional. It wasn't about the great Shakespearean sonnet, the great Shakespearean play, the great drama, the Homer, the Dante, the anything of that. It was simply getting your leg over. Yeah? Biological fitness was the meta-narrative. Anything else was a little, dirty little tabloid small narrative. Yeah? Fitness does not necessarily track truth. I'll come back to that in a second. So, for example, take religion. People like E.O. Wilson, the founder of sociobiology, says that religion is there simply to congeal identity. Yeah? The world's a bit scary, isn't it? I mean, I get terrified when I'm going driving these free states in America, all this traffic and all that. And I want to go home to Buddha. I just want to have things congealed. I want to have meaning. I want to go to my church and be clapped and say, hi, Conor, thanks for coming. And you look, that's lovely. And I want to belong. Yeah? I want to belong because life's scary. Life's scary. And religion provides the function of congealing identity. Yeah? Fair enough, isn't it? But then so does National Socialism. The Decalogue, Mein Kampf, equal candidates. It's purely contingent and retrospective which one does the game. And it's very, 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 very difficult within this description to adjudicate between the two. It's only the congealing that matters. Keep you safe so you keep breeding. Yeah? Mein Kampf, Decalogue, who gives a crap? We'll just see which one wins. Everton, Liverpool. Yeah? Man City, Man United. I don't care. We'll see who wins the league. Yeah? We'll see who wins the league. The philosopher John Searle, another famous philosopher of mind, he argued, you probably all maybe know this, he offered this argument against the notion of strong AI, artificial intelligence, that computers can be mindful. And his famous argument was the Chinese room argument. It's absolutely irrelevant to us, but let me just explain this, transferring it to what we're talking about here. So, Searle's Chinese room argument. Imagine someone locked in a room, and this person does not understand any Chinese. In the room there are boxes in which there are Chinese symbols. In addition, there's a rule book. Sorry, I had a joke in my head. That instructs him how to respond to certain sets of symbols. Yeah? He follows the rules and gives correct responses. And here's a quote from Searle. If the person in the Chinese room do not understand Chinese on the basis of implementing a computer program for understanding Chinese, then neither does any other digital computer. Solely on that basis, because no digital computer has anything which I do not have. The point is, the man in the room is only a grasp of syntax rather than semantics. Structure rather than meaning, if you like. Right? Now, this is not relevant to our discussion, so we're going to transfer this. So transferring Searle's argument to the question of what relation truth has with biological fitness, we can see that a syntactical grasp of Chinese, metaphorically speaking, is sufficient to get the job done. Purely biological fitness. You're going to breed, get those genes down the line, remember. Moreover, a merely syntactical argument can go all the way down. In other words, there's no such thing as a semantical understanding of Chinese. We don't need it, or rather, natural selection does not need it. This being the case, Chinese is not about truth. There is no truth of Chinese, but simply the occurrence of tasks, so to speak. Call this major task sex. Biological fitness. And we must bear in mind that any road that leads to Rome, sex, does, by definition, get us there. Even we thought we were going to Belfast. And even in fact we believe that Belfast is Rome. But that's pretty hard to do. After all, Columbus never thought he discovered America, but he had. And that's beside the point. Yeah? It's function, not truth. Okay. So it's purely functional. National Socialism, Decalogue, you give it, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Just keep us all right, keep us all NHS, private, it doesn't matter. As long as we as a mammalian group stick together and generally speaking are more successful than one other group by inventing this crap. Yeah? Call it church, call it charity, call it love, call it literature, call it truth. Just get together and get it sorted out. Okay, so survival has the ascendancy over truth. Fitness does not track truth except accidentally. Except accidentally. Okay, there's a song from the Rolling Stones. Do you know this one? I can't remember what song it is actually. Is it Sympathy for the Devil? You can't always get what you want, but you might just get what you need. The Rolling Stones. That's the situation epistemologically and ontologically that we're in. You only need to get. It's only need. It's not want. As long as it happens. As long as genes pass, that's absolutely fine. Okay, let's move on from that. So there we are, Dawkins' enlightened summer camp with no kumbaya nonsense crap, no theological guff, none of this religious whatever. Right? We're educated, yeah? We're up for it, yeah? I've read my stuff. I've read Origin of Species. I love it. Yeah, let's go for it. So, kumbaya's out. John Lennon's in. Imagine there's no people. It's easy if you try. No free will within us, no life or death, ethics or reason, arts or sciences. Wasn't it one of Darwin's most avid supporters, E.O. Wilson, who said that evolution is the greatest myth we have? Because this epistemological skepticism is pervasive. No objects, no free will, no ethics, no formal thought, you name it. It's all gone. So, the Darwinist is like the proverbial drunk man on the train, who appears to be walking more straight than his sober fellow travellers. The train's going this way, he's going that way, it balances out. Yeah? So, okay. How are we doing here with time?
50 minutes. 10
minutes. Okay, let me move on then. I want to just attack naturalism and materialism. Okay. Okay, well, let me just... right. So we talked about something called... So remember I said earlier about... They say, mind has come from matter. Yeah? To you dualists. Yeah? Mind has come from matter. Yeah? That's Monday. And then on Tuesday they say, therefore, there's no such thing as mind. Right? So it's really unbelievably circular, question-begging nonsense. So the point is here that materialism itself is a misnomer. Naturalism, ontological naturalism, is itself a misnomer. Now, I'm not advocating some sort of supernatural stuff that involves science, intelligence, and all that crap. I don't mean any of that. But philosophically, metaphysically, naturalism, ontological naturalism, is an ideology. It is not an argued for position. It's a presumed default position. It's not argued for. It's presumed. And its consequences are exactly what I said at Dawkins' summer camp. Imagine there's no people. Imagine there's no ethics. Imagine informal thought. Imagine there are objects. It's a bit weird. How would you have a Holocaust in that? Extremely expensive ontologically to have a Holocaust. No matter what we think about theologically, how we solve that theodicy, how we think about systematic theology, that's not my point. But to be a phenomenon called the Holocaust is deeply expensive, ontologically speaking. Deeply. It's going to be right down your pockets, in your savings. It ain't cheap. It ain't cheap. You've got to have objects, you've got to have people, you've got to have free will, you've got to have ethics, you've got to have normativity, you've got to have all this stuff. Right, wrong, good, evil. Yeah? Materialism, I don't think you can actually prove sex or rape. It's impossible. I bet anyone a tenner. Okay. And the thing about naturalism is it's become the great ideology of our time. We just think to be educated we have to presume it. Now, I'm all for methodological naturalism to some degree, but not ontological naturalism, because I just don't think it has any intellectual worth. And all the atheists are sort of panicking about this now because they knew it. And I have a whole stack of quotes here from all atheists, which I'm not going to bother reading to you. But every single one of them goes, oh my goodness, we haven't a clue what we're talking about. Every single one. Even one who doesn't believe in mind and people. Because I've got no... He says at one point, I think naturalism will die of 1,000 failures. This guy doesn't even believe in cells. But he's saying naturalism will die of 1,000 failures. They know it. They know it. They know it. That's the strength of the debate. It's the seriousness of the debate. And matter, what's matter? Point to matter for me. Go on. Give someone 10 of the point to it. No, that's not matter. That's a chair. Okay. You can't find matter anywhere. You always have to individuate it into this bit of matter. Yeah? You can't find matter. And even Russell, God rest his soul, said that matter is now more spooky than anything on a spiritual seance. Chomsky has been brilliant on this recently, having a right pop at materialism, naturalism, even though he's an atheist, saying, we haven't a clue what we're talking about. The grammar of our debate is completely failed. It's collapsed. We have to reconsider the entire thing again. Because we're inheriting a 19th century way of thinking. And I don't even mean quantum physics. I don't even mean that sort of stuff, which is your bag. But I just mean that even thinking, here's matter, which we can't even do, because it's always a material thing, and thing, the word, isn't material. Yeah? You're always picking out something. You can't find matter. You can describe material properties. Yeah? You can't find matter. It's like a ghost. Which is quite strange. Okay. Joseph Ratzinger once said, that's the current pope, the separation of physics, quote from him, the separation of physics from metaphysics achieved by Christian thinking is being steadily cancelled. Everything is to become physics again. Yeah? The separation of physics and metaphysics. So here's stuff, part of it, applied, theoretical, whatever, general, special, quantum, whatever we want to do here. Yeah, that's stuff we get on with. The metaphysics is like, it's meta. Yeah, but he's saying, goodness, this is coming together again. To the point that Rutherford said, Everything is physics, all else is stamp collecting. Yeah? Where's evolution in that? Is he denying evolution? Where's the biological world? Where are natural kinds? Where's anything? Is this not the liquidation of existence, the flatlining of being? This is the end. There was one quote I wanted to... let me give you a couple of things here before we finish off. There's an old saying, the theology that marries the science of today, you all know this, yeah? The theology that marries the science of today will be the what? The widow of tomorrow. Yeah? Think intelligent design. Right? Bang on. I'm up for that. Totally up for that. But let's re-articulate that. The atheism that marries the science of today will be also the widow of tomorrow. That's why Dawkins wrote The God Delusion, because he realized evolution wouldn't help anymore, so he went into third-rate philosophical arguments, which Hume had done much better than he had. So, and he even says it himself. Doubt me, this is Dawkins. Darwin may have been triumphant at the end of the 20th century, but we must acknowledge the possibility that new facts may come to light which will force our successors of the 21st century to abandon Darwinism or modify it beyond recognition. Flip me. Right? If that's the case, why? Atheism has good reasons for it. Evolution ain't one of them. Okay, I want to just give one more quote and I'll let you all so we can do Q&A. Because I quite like this. Dawkins tells us that there's a quote, that the human psyche has two great sicknesses. The urge to carry vendetta across generations and a tendency to fasten group labels on people rather than see them as individuals. Right? I'm up for that. I mean, I think he's right. Yeah? But there's a sneaky problem. That's exactly what he does in his theory, his version of Darwinism. So, he then goes on to attribute these great sicknesses to Abrahamic religion. But this is exactly what his theory of the selfish gene perpetrates. The identity of the organism, any organism, is denied validity. Insofar as ephemeral. For only the genes are real. The replicators. As a result, the organism is but a cloud or a swarm of genes that have carried their own selfish vendettas across many generations. But alas, these mad fundamentalist genes do not exist. That's mine, not him. That'd be a nice confession, wouldn't it? Mea culpa. I'd be like... Notably, it is not the opponents of Darwinism that say that. It is geneticists, molecular biologists, atheists, a lot of them, that say this. The gene is extremely important, genetic material is extremely important, but we are in a post-genomic world where things are more dynamic, we are figuring stuff out, we've never thought before there isn't an atom. And of any evolution, what they try to do is, you think about it right back to Plato, so, how do I do this? So, if I move my hand, you have to have the wall staying still, yeah? Something mustn't change for there to be change, yeah? So the gene, the selfish gene, was going to act as their atom. But of course, it's as dynamic as everything else. And this is why you have the atom assistance biology, developmental biology, especially assistance biology actually, developmental biology, all these things, trying to get something staying still so we can actually believe in evolution. I'm dying to believe in it. It's fantastic. I want it. Please give it to me for Christmas. But you have to have something. You have to have a framework within which it becomes intelligible. The one other thing I wanted to say, if I have 2 minutes, I'll just say this thing about selfishness. We're always told, it seems to me anyway, that selfishness is primary. Yeah? You're always trying to get your leg over. You're always trying to get the job, the girl, You're always trying to get the car. You're always trying to get the fame. You're always trying to get your genes across the generations. It's always selfishness, isn't it? Isn't that what we hear? Yeah? No. Cooperation is primary. I'll tell you why. Two very simple reasons. First of all, there has to be something there to be selfish. So anyone who's a philosopher will know you can't have something selfish there. It can't be selfish to be there before it's there to be selfish. Right? So that's the first point. The second point is that all of us, are actually a manifestation, biologically, of past communities. Bits and bobs that were running about the place. Yeah? One was watching Emmerdale Farm, watching Coronation Street, one was watching EastEnders. They all came together and said, no, we're not doing it anymore. Yeah? We're going to form you. And they suppressed their selfishness and came together and formed an organism through fundamental reciprocity and cooperation. And that's why cancer, for example, is the great realization of that, because it's the rebellion against that where it tries to go selfish again. Yeah? This is not from me, it's all biologists. So, there has to be, it's called the existence problem. It's not just about the survival of the fittest, it's about the arrival of the fittest. And this is always along the way. Yeah? So there has to be something there ready to be selfish. If it was selfish, selfishness may be original. But it ain't originary. If it was originary, you'd be sitting there, a few chemicals, in a puddle, as many as you're going to go, I can't be fagged. I'm just staying here with me. I just love me in the pool. It's nice. I'm going to paddle around, just be me. Why should I bother with all this stuff the next millions of years? Why should I be bothered? Why should I be bothered? There has to be something there which cannot become from selfishness, but it can then accommodate selfishness. Just like it can accommodate altruism. Yeah? But the originary has to be non-selfish. I'll end with this, sorry. So you think of it, does Darwin kill God? Yes, he does. He kills Paley's God, intelligence design God, creationist God, so forth. And what has happened recently with these guys, Dawkins and Tal, is simply they have simply resurrected Paley's God in the form of natural selection in an ill-formed, ill-principled manner, which is not philosophically astute. And in the end, they're betraying, because of universalizing a biological theory, betraying evolution itself, making it impossible for me to teach my children evolution. Because metaphysically I have to say to them, you don't exist, I have no free will, there are no objects, so what the hell is there to evolve? There has to be something to evolve. That something is expensive. And I believe in evolution wholeheartedly. I just don't think that Dawkins, the Neanderthal, does. Thanks.
Well, I'm pleased to say we have a few minutes now for questions, up to half an hour. I don't know if Dr. Silver, you might be able to just pass the microphone around so we can pick up questions. If you can keep your questions fairly brief, that would be, and a question rather than just a statement, that would be good. Thank you.
Are we on? You're on.
I don't think you are. Are you?
A compliment.
You are. You are.
I'm on. You are the most wonderful speaker I've ever had in my life. Now comes the cruelty. What did you say? In a sentence.
I think to believe in evolution is easier to believe in God.
Again, please.
If you believe in evolution, it's much easier if you believe in God.
Well done.
Thank you.
I actually don't think you can believe in evolution if you're an atheist.
Because you can't believe in anything.
Because you can't believe in anything. You're merely, the way to compare it in your head is the way the creationists go through all these mad genealogies in the Bible. Yeah, like sort of bookkeeping. All you've got is, the British, I don't know if it's probably mixed nationalities here, but there's an English thing which we grew up with, the football scores on Saturday afternoon and go, Millwall 1, West Ham 2. Do you know this from Saturday? Yeah? So the creationists are doing that. Abraham 1, Isaac 2. And then all they're doing in evolution, in atheistic terms, are going, this gene 2, this gene 1. It's a pure... So one thing I didn't mention, what I wanted to bring in, was that they have a purely diachronic view of evolution. It's called phylogeny, a pure flux of history. This happened to have happened. But you need a synchronic one, and they sort of try to do that with the selfish gene, but it doesn't work. So think of it as a theatre and a play. Yeah? Yeah? So the play might be the selfish gene, like the genes in you. You've got DNA stuff that happened to survive, but then dragonflies are pretty successful. They're around the dinosaurs. They're doing pretty good. So they're doing pretty well as a phenotype. So we've got this flux, this phylogeny, this pure history, this pure diachronic history. Yeah? So who won? Oh, the dinosaurs got... Oh, they were doing really... Oh, no, we're screwed. And then we took over men did all right. Oh, then they messed up with the green gases, and they got screwed. And then it's like, right, so that's the play. What's on the stage? Yeah, that's the play. Is it King Lear? Is it Macbeth? Is it, whatever? But you have to think of the theatre itself, the structure, the form that allows this play to even take place, upon which it rests, upon which intelligibility is possible. Yeah? So it's a theatre. Think of that as synchronic. And in the play, think of that as diachronic. Yeah? So we don't know we just don't know which play we've put on. Is it Waiting for Godot? Or Waiting for the Selfish Gene? I don't know. Or whatever play. It accommodates this, but there's a structural side, which systems biology and all these different things, right through all different disciplines, subdisciplines, are all investigating. It cannot... Why did that guy say, the philosopher of biology from Harvard, if you ask the question, when did human life begin? Never. Because he just goes back to your genealogy. He just goes, your mum, gave birth to you. But her mum, there's nothing, it's just dust choking in you. There's actually nothing, there's not actually a form. But I think it's quite strange he's got kidneys, a pancreas, a liver, a heart, a brain. I think it's quite strange that this mammal came through this phylogeny, was able to write the Bible, Mein Kampf, and Origin of Species. It's quite strange. There's a structure to that. Yeah? It's there's a constraint. There's a form. There's a form to it. Sorry, mate.
There's a window back, so...
Yeah.
I'm just curious, with all the various contentions that you presented, how do they... with all the contentions that you presented in your discussion, how do they differ, or do they act as similar to individuals who might subscribe to intelligent design as explaining how life came about? I think I'm just trying to understand if there is nothing stable in terms of how life began, for the progression to take place, how would we say that intelligent design is not the answer either? Because you don't appear to be someone who subscribes to that theory in its entirety either.
Well, I'm a Christian, by the way. If intelligent design was proved tomorrow, I would become an atheist. I think it's the strongest argument for atheism I've ever come across, other than the problem of evil. Although, in fact, by it being proven, it is the ultimate argument for the problem of evil. So, because you can't pick out something, right? So it's like someone winning intelligent design, theologically speaking, or metaphysically speaking. It's like someone saying, I won the lottery. I'm so lucky. I've got my little thing here which you can't explain, by gradualism. Yeah? You won the lottery. But to win the lottery, what does that entail? Everyone else fails. So you're picking up one phenomenon and venerating it over the disaster happening. Everyone eating each other, everyone suffering, cancer, you blimmin' name it. Yeah? Forgetting economic and political. I'm just talking biological. Yeah? You cannot pick up, if you pick up that phenomenon, that's a Homeric God. It's not an Abrahamic God. That's not a God who can elicit worship. If that's proven, I become an atheist. Simple as that, because I hold them account for everything that's happened in this existence.
So the problem with free will then enters into the discussion.
No, it's not about free will. It's about picking out a particular phenomenon and saying, I'm going to venerate this, what do they do? I can't think on my head now. They pick a particular one and say this bacteria can't do this, got a little motor thing going, and that means it can't be gradualism. Ergo, it's inference to the designer. Well, I want to kick that designer in the balls, to be honest. Because I want to know why the woman down the road's got leukemia and I'm going to give her chemotherapy. I want to know why people have got cystic fibrosis. I want to know why. If that's the notion of it, that's not divinity. That's just a big Jedi Knight. That's just someone with bigger biceps than me, which is easy to do, I assure you. But, I'm that intelligent, this is this intelligent. Well, that's crap. That's Nietzsche's will to power, in some sense, because, for example, if I may, if God is simply power, rather than intellect equally, if you think about it, if I had the power, what would I be? God. How can you worship that? You're worshipping an amount, not a person. Paul cannot be replaced by Peter. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and it's omnipotence and all that stuff, omniscience, all that, absolutely. But it's mediated by a notion of a personalism in the sense of, Adam, where are you?
Purpose.
Yeah, it's not simply Ben Kenobi going with the Force, and I actually don't know why Darth Vader isn't any better. I actually don't know why they're any better than Darth Vader. Darth Vader's only trying to do the same thing as they are. Yeah, but they're spinning at their labour. Yeah, it's the light side. What do they call it? The light, is the light? What's it called? The light side or something like that. And it's the dark side. Oh, that's just labour spin. That's just labour spin. As Darth Vader quite rightly knows. No, it's a balance, and they admit it. It's a balance. So why go for one rather than the other? Let's just see which one works out best or better. God can, if there's a God, and there may not be. There may not be. Quite willing to accept that. But if there's a God, I think this is the only model of God that we can have. Model's the wrong word, but, it cannot be a force. It cannot be something which is univocal. It cannot be something which is simply an impersonal, bigger version of me. Because I'd be really annoyed at him if that was the case. Yeah.
I think the gentleman back first.
Well, you seem to have given us a long list of unpalatable conclusions which can be derived from ontological naturalism or something thereabouts. And I don't doubt that there are possible arguments to the effect that these conclusions follow from ontological naturalism. There are philosophers who have ably defended each one of those arguments and conclusions, but are there not also possible arguments to the effect that these conclusions don't follow from ontological arguments, and philosophers who have ably defended those arguments? And how can you be so sure that the former arguments defeat the latter arguments?
Sorry, you lost me slightly there. I don't know what the former and latter are. Sorry.
The former argument, the arguments to the effect that these conclusions follow from ontological naturalism, and the latter arguments.
I asked a simple question. Mm-hmm. If we're materialists, right, which ontological naturalism entails, as it's crudely understood. That's how they sell it. Yeah. If matter is the base, it's the base term. How do we have material things? Who's our chief looked at the chair? I want to know how we have a chair. I want to know how we have a kidney. I want to know how we have a funeral. I want to know how we have a birth. I want to know we have beauty, truth, epistemological veracity. I want to know how we have justice. I want to know we have evil. I want to know how normativity. I want to know how we have objectivity. I want to know how we have crime. I want to know how all those things, if I've only matter, stuffing my gob like I'm sucking up the Sahara.
Okay.
And they are admitting it. These guys are admitting it. These top thought, they're admitting it. Whereas I think the rest are like religious equivalents are charlatans. I think at least these guys are honest and go, there ain't nothing, guys, sorry, we can all go home. In fact, oh no, there is no home. Oh, there is no us. At least they've got integrity. Oh, there's no integrity. I mean, at least they are. They're like some charlatan religious people trying to sell you salvation in some stupid way, like snake oil. At least you can actually have a proper conversation with these people where you see what's up for grabs.
Okay.
I thought the most interesting thing was the last thing you said. That,
What was that?
about intelligent design. That if that was shown to be correct, you become an atheist. I don't quite get that, because even if there's not intelligent design, there's still all those bad things you talked about before. We still have, nasty people and people dying in cancer and stuff. Whether or not a few folks are still winning the battle because design came in and solved the problem, that's some people, some creatures. But there's still all this terrible stuff. Why isn't that enough on its own to make you be an atheist?
Well, there's two things there. First of all, I don't believe in evilness as a God. I don't believe, as my atheist, I don't believe in any evil whatsoever or suffering unless there's a God. And that's demonstrable. As my atheist friends are saying, how could there be? How could there be when biology is not studying life, when there's no self, when there's no free will, there is no belief, there's no ethics, there is no formal thought, there is no anything. So how could you possibly, a human life never began? So how could there be? We're fantasizing like the Matrix. Right? That's a massive metaphysical argument. Intelligent design come in like, I don't know, granny on a Sunday trying to get a cup of tea and a cup of scones and go, by the way, I love this China set. And it's really nice. And outside, everyone's rioting and smashing up the police station, smashing up the houses, and she's going, no, look, the tea's really nice. I've got my Yorkshire ten, I've got my scones, and we just feel nice. And the inference being, there must be a China maker. Yeah? Theologically, crap. It's too cowardly. It's too bought in. It's secular, it's atheist, it's bought into a way of thinking which is foreign to its... what it wants, which is to accomplish, it's actually borrowed from its enemy. It's not. I mean, it's just not true. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, right, like, let me ask you this, right? If I found you a phenomenon, right? Like this, our buddy's chair, yeah? Yeah? And I could show you, demonstrate, that to Darwinian gradualism, yeah? Natural selection, Darwinian gradualism, incremental, this could not have been created by that. Ooh, let's write home to mummy. I mean, who gives a crap? What does that mean? This chair, they're rotting out in the streets with cancer and stuff. I mean, things are got limping and the things have got. I mean, it doesn't make. What would that? What would that? I don't think that inference follows. It comes to Darth Vader's created it then.
If you just said that if this happened, you'd be an atheist. You said if...
No, I didn't say it just happened. I just talked about system. No, I didn't say about... I just talked against phylogeny as a pure diachronic account of biology. I'm talking about metaphysical. So you have the physical, biological, yeah? And we have to have different accounts of it, different layers of it, different accounts of it, yeah? And I think there's lots of different versions of it. I don't think we discover something we can't understand in science, we go to theology. I think we do new ways of doing science. Right? But I'm not, I know I'm the science and religion, right? But I'm anti-science and theology, right? So, but I don't want to nip to Jesus and go, mate, how'd you do that? Yeah? I just don't want to nip off and go, so how'd you do that, mate? I mean, I forget all that stuff, but this is magic. Jesus, you resurrect from the dead and all and the miracles, and this is another miracle. Brilliant. He's on 23 now. That's brilliant. It just doesn't make any sense theologically. It's not a cosmological approach. It has to be metaphysical. It cannot be physical with an inference to something we just simply cannot explain. It can't. It just doesn't work. I think it's the greatest argument for atheism ever invented. I really do. I really do.
I don't get that last step.
Well, because if it was, what's that? The bacterium. What was it again? I've forgotten the name. Flagellum. Right. So take the chair as that. Yeah. And I go, no, gradualism can't account for that. Inference then being designer. I don't think that's anything to write home about. I think that's something to write home and cry about. So you did introduce a complexity on this, but not on cell structure.
Yeah.
With apoptosis, with cancerous cells, or I mean, it doesn't make. I don't understand what that God would be. It's too small. It's too parochial, and it's too anthropomorphic. As I was saying, actually, when we were having supper, I was saying, I gave a talk here a while ago, I was saying the thing about Christianity which is most convincing to me is it's totally and utterly unbelievable. It's the only unbelievable religion in the entire world. I think every religion, no matter if you think it's nuts or not, whether aliens came down and took me up and we worshipped them, or any religion you pick in the world, is totally logically resolvable. Whether you assent to it or not is a different matter, but it's totally believable. Christianity is the only unbelievable religion. Even in eternity. Even in eternity. That's why it's God. Everything else is an idol. That's what I think.
John, and then John first.
Sorry to challenge your paradoxes. It seems to me that when everything is said and done, science tries to find simple explanations for complex phenomena. So there is a kind of reductionism involved, and it seems to me it's a wonderful thing to do. And somehow or other you have to reconcile the importance of explanatory reductionism with the complexity of nature. You seem to be kind of dismissing this.
How did I dismiss that? Sorry. I was introducing complexity when they were introducing reductionism. When they were just, say, for example, Dawkins and Dennett, like it's simply a diachronic phylogeny, I was saying we need systems biology, development biology, we look at molecular biology, we need to, there's all different things, we bring them in concert and build a more complex view of the world. Sorry, I don't know how I was dismissing any of that whatsoever.
Science tries to explain the complex. For example, a computer, in terms of parts and the arrangements of the parts. It's a kind of reductive explanation. And science, since Descartes, has committed itself to that kind of explaining the simple in terms of understandable, smaller, simpler parts.
Absolutely, but it knows it's lying.
You're dismissing this whole thing.
No, how am I dismissing it? Which
Everything
sentence?
you've said seems to be dismissing it.
How did I dismiss that? I have no idea how I dismissed that whatsoever. I'll tell you, no, not at all. I was saying they were dismissing that. I bring on complexity. And bring on methodological reductionism, bring on methodological naturalism, bring it on. Because I don't want to go under the knife on a surgery table without it. But, look at it this way. Okay, so we've got methodology and ontology, yeah? So you go for, or one goes for, say you're getting your appendix out. You're getting your appendix out, yeah? Right? And the surgeon sticks you under, anaesthetises you, sticks you on a knife, treats you as if you're dead. Because he cuts you open. Right? You're numb. So you're actually dead in a way, like, you're analogous to being dead, yeah? As if you were dead. Cuts out the inflamed appendix, gets rid of it, sews you up, makes you alright, brings you back to the recovery room. When you wake up, he says, "How you doing, mate? You doing alright?" He doesn't keep going, treating you as if you're dead. Science, to do what it wants to do, take apart this, explain this in molecular terms, or whatever, or physical terms, bring it on. But, we actually were saying again at supper, the fact of doing it by a person within a universe which seems to accommodate intelligibility seems to demand that we come back from the asif dead to say, how are you, mate, after post-operation? The very humility through its possibility, the humility through its philological and existential possibility, not only is its mathematical intelligibility, its actual, as a phenomenon of being a scientist, is not scientific. There are, as I said, there are no scientists in science. You show me a scientific theory for a scientist.
I mean, that's completely meaningless.
That's not.
Completely meaningless.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Does anyone else think that's completely meaningless, or does anyone get that?
Yes, I think it's meaningless.
You think it's meaningless? Brilliant. Anyone else doesn't think it's meaningless? You don't think it's meaningless? You think it's meaningless too? So 1, 2, 3. Well, the guys here, I love this, guys in the corner.
I don't think it's meaningless, but I think I can show you a scientific theory for scientists, if that's what you're asking for.
In what way? Go for it.
Some psychologists looked at something like when editors decided that editors of journals decided to give the go-ahead for publications for journals submitted, and it had something to do with particular psychological factors. And not
well, that's slightly different what I'm saying. That's just simply a psychology of mind, and not mind. Those minds may be owned by scientists.
The example I gave you earlier, is Pluto a planet? It's not a scientific question.
Yeah.
So all science has to have some kind of something beyond science to make it work.
Right. I have to get to the lab. I've got to go through that experiment again. Wait a minute. I've got to go. Now, what happened there? There was telos.
Sorry?
Telos. I had a sense of... I decided to get out of my pit to do an activity which I deemed worthy rather than just sitting in the toilet all day or going down to the bookies. And I thought, with my eureka moment, when I discovered DNA, to run into the eagle and say I found the recipe of life, I didn't run and go, by the way, I found a great ale. I discerned one thing to be more meaningful than the other. I got out of my pit for one thing rather than the other. Daytime TV or go to the lab. I found one thing that got Nobel Prizes. We've got Fields Medals. We've got Nobel Literature Prize. We've got what? There's meaning in that. There's telos in that. The activity in that. And also, there's a person in it. And a person is not empirically verifiable.
I wouldn't deny what you're saying. I can't. It's been very difficult. Your presentation is extremely entertaining, but I find it very hard to extract from it a sufficiently consistent process of rational thought to really do anything with it.
It's dead simple.
It's an example of that. It's an entertaining demonstration of walking up and down. But I'd like to see it linked to a systematic, analytic debate that one could follow and either agree with or disagree.
Dead simple. Dead simple. Right, sorry, you go first, and then I'll go.
I think I understand what you mean. I think you mean a person being a scientist is being a scientist, but that's not the person.
No.
The person is the person. What he does is called being a scientist.
Absolutely.
And when he's doing that, he's doing science.
Because he was always a person before he was a scientist. And desire led him to do science. To do scientist. You cannot actually really, in the end, be a scientist. You simply do science, in a sense. Yeah? And it's dead simple. I'll give you, here's an analytical point. I think that to believe, as I said, to believe in evolution, it's easier to believe in evolution if you believe in God. or transcendence. There's one. I think it's easier to believe in objects and so forth. Otherwise, I think what's called in posh terms mereological nihilism. Yeah, part the whole nihilism. Dust. I don't think that you can survey a battlefield and look at all those dead bodies and actually pick those out and parse them in analytical terms which are ontologically robust without begging the question. There's no well-principled. There isn't. There just isn't. For example, well, I'll give you one. I'll give you a classic one. I'll give you an atheist analytical philosopher in America, an atheist metaphysician, analytical philosopher who said, we cannot, without a higher metaphysics, prove that the Twin Towers fell.
These are just isolated.
No, they're not. They're complete analytical statements. You have to have robust persistence conditions. You have to have persistence conditions. You know what those are? You have to have... No,
Your
right.
language is entirely formal without semantic content.
Right.
That's what you will do.
Well, I'm not sure, but okay. Let me get right. Okay. Yep. No, wait a minute. Right. Does a piece of paper have robust persistent conditions that we could actually call the cops and say...
It's more, John.
How is that... Persistent conditions is John Locke's term, not mine.
Well, if you were to spend half an hour explaining the principle...
So, how do we... Wait, when you have... What did you have for supper tonight?
I refuse to answer this. Where's it going? I mean, this is just an...
But you decide... No. You decide to eat one thing rather than another, right? Right? And if you had a child's head, you would think, right, you're a cannibal.
Where's it going?
I don't see how that's confusing. The point is simply that the common sense world we have, chairs, poetry, science, marriage, you name it, is ontologically, demonstrably so, extremely expensive. We have to have something called a person, which we can have to demonstrate. We have to have something, an object, which we can sit on. We have to have something called normativity that can judge one act as good and one act as better. One act good, one act worse. We have to have normativity so we can judge one act to be illogical and one thing of reasoning to be logical. Those are deeply hard if we're simply matter dancing around with space and atoms. I don't know how that's not completely simple. And I'm saying that the ultra-Darwinist view of evolution leads to that view. It's nihilistic. It's neological nihilism, it's ontological nihilism, and it's epistemological nihilism. But that's it. That's dead simple and demonstrable.
I think on that note, we'll better call it a halt, unfortunately. Thank you, Dr. Cunningham. Very, very entertaining lecture.
Apparently only entertaining.
And if you have any other questions, do stay behind afterwards. And just one final announcement. So the 26th of January will be our Thursday of the second week. A very different topic. The ancestry theory of mechanism, orbits, gods and gears. It's going to be looking at the oldest known gear mechanism in the world and what inspired it. So that's on 26th of January in the new year. Wish you all a very happy Christmas.